And this evening's topic was carefully selected because as individuals, whether old or young, one of the things we can't do away with is the fact that we would have people to relate with. And so relationships are a part of us as people. And more especially for the young person who is trying to make a mark, who is trying to, fit into various sectors of life. The relationships you are building will play a key role in how much you can do and how far you can go. And so the topic is not, I'm sure for some people, when they saw the topic, what came to mind is love relationships or romantic relationships. Yes, it's part, but we are looking at relationships as a broad, topic, which each one of us needs to build in an effective way. And we'll begin with a certain picture. And I would like to hear your thoughts on what you see in this particular picture. So the picture on the screen, what will you describe it as? What is happening? What do you see? If you have any comment, you can raise your hand and I'll call you, or you type it in the chat. What do you see in this particular image? As much as possible, I would appreciate if we talk. Okay. Who is ready? Okay, so Emmanuel is saying that a person making an effort to connect with another individual. That is great. So you see someone making an effort to connect with another individual. That's an important observation. And so the word connect is very key in this particular case. Any other? So Irene is saying individuals trying to assist each other. That is great. So another key word there, assist. So we've gotten connect and we've also gotten assist. So one person is saying that he sees someone trying to connect with the other. And another person is saying that these two individuals are trying to assist each other. Very important. Let me see if there's any last one, and then we proceed. Okay. So as I've mentioned not long ago, as individuals, relationships form a significant part of our everyday lives. So whether you are in the house, whether you are at the workplace, whether you are in school, whether you're on the streets, whether you are in the market, there's some connection that has to be happening. There has to be some assisting that will be happening. So you are either trying to connect with somebody, you are trying to assist somebody, or someone is trying to assist you, or someone is trying to connect with you, as somebody has said. One person is saying that a person trying to create relationship which could lead to something impactful. That's great. Joshua also says it's also about two people trying to arrive at something. That is great. So in our everyday lives, we find ourselves living with people, working with people. If it's in school, you are sitting in the classroom with somebody, you are going for lectures with somebody, you are sitting in a car. So there's this bit of us, as we will say, that we are social beings. And so once we are social beings, it means that we cannot live without another person. And so if you look at the image, one thing you see is that this person on my left this person who has the red plug is trying to get it fit into the one with the blue, whatever it is. So there's somebody who is trying to connect the plug to a socket, and the socket is the blue person. And one thing you would understand is that if the plug, the two pins at the end here, let me see if I can okay, so the two pins here, if there's no entry point, if there's no slot in this other person's socket, if there's no entry point for it, if he tries to fit it, it will not enter. And so the relationships that we build, or the relationships that we find ourselves in, there are times where in trying to connect, you may not be able to connect properly, not because there's a problem with you, but because whatever or whoever you are trying to connect with is not a suitable, point for connection. And that can lead to a lot of frustrations. And so there are parents and children who are having challenges because
body way. Like mom say body. Not say body then.
All right. So I've muted everyone. So there are parents and children whose relationships are very terrible, go south, because in trying to find a common ground, they are not able to. Different opinions, different, generations of ideas. And as one person said, these two people are trying to arrive at a particular destination or a particular endpoint. And if the two people are not on the same page, they cannot meet that particular goal. You would find in the Bible, Amos 3 verse 3, the question as to whether two people can work together if they do not agree. So the picture is depicting this particular, statement, that if we are not able to get someone who fits our purpose or fits our style, it may be difficult to build that connection. And when we do not find such a person, how do we also try to build relationships nonetheless? Now, for this particular webinar, we would attempt to achieve these four goals. Number one, we want to see or understand the concept of resilience and coping skills in the context of relationships. And we'll also explore some forms of relationships and their unique challenges. And we'll also look at some key coping skills that can help you build and maintain effective relationships, and some actionable steps for building resilience. Now, in defining the key terms, the first key term is resilience. When we talk about resilience, what should come to mind is what we have in this picture here. So in this picture, you see a ground that is very, rigid, very solid, probably cemented, and there are cracks in this ground. There are cracks in there. And you see a certain plant sprout out of the crack. So the environment in itself is one that is very, unconducive. It's an environment that ideally you wouldn't want to find yourself as a seed, because you will struggle. If you are trying to sprout out, you hit, a blockade, you hit, a certain hindrance. And so the picture in here is showing a certain plant that is resilient. And the idea is that this seed, when it was a seed, it had to find a way to come out of a crack within the ground so that it will not die off. And I've forgotten the name. I think there's a name for this particular phenomenon. And the idea that the seed, in trying to sprout out in seed germination, it will attempt to look for where there's a source of light. And in our basic science, if you recall, one of the important elements for seed germination is sunlight. And so if you talk about resilience, we are talking about your ability as a person to bounce back from challenges. So there's a challenge, there's a hindrance. As we see in this image, there are a lot of things that are stifling your progress. There are things that make it look impossible for you, to break through, to become who you wish you can become. There are challenges, in this particular case of our topic, in your relationships with family, with friends, with your loved one, and it seems like there's no way around it. In resilience, what you are doing is that despite the challenges, you are able to bounce back. You are able to adjust. You are able to adapt yourself to the situations that you find yourself in so that you will come out stronger, like this particular plant that we see in our picture. So resilience is an important, attribute that each one of us needs to build. And we'll talk more about it later on. The second key term is coping skills. When we talk about coping skills, we also, sometimes would say coping strategies. These are intentional things that you do, intentional strategies, intentional actions, intentional behaviors that you put up so that you can manage your stress, you can resolve the issues, the conflicts, the challenges around you, and then you can have this balance within your mind and your social, relationships or connections. So intentional strategies and behaviors that we use to manage stress, resolve conflicts, and also maintain a sound psychosocial well-being. The last key definition is relationships. So when we talk about relationships, we are looking at the word to relate. And some of the words that were used in our early stages, someone said connect. So if you are relating, that means you are connecting. If you are relating, that means you are working with somebody or you are walking with somebody. There's some interaction between you and another person, or there's some connection. So when we talk about relationships, generally, we are looking at the connections and interactions between individuals, which is often characterized by different levels of mental, so intellectual, intimacy or connection, emotional intimacy or connection, physical connection, and social connection. So in this particular webinar, we are related. It's like a speaker audience relationship that is happening in here. And within our homes, as we'd find, there are many kinds of relationships. So we have the familial relationships or family relationships. At home, you have siblings, you have parents, you have, extended family members, members of your nuclear family. We relate with them in different ways. And that is a form of relationship. And it comes with its own challenges. Even twins have their own differences and times where they disagree. And so with our families, with our siblings, with our parents and all that, there are issues that come up that will demand that we cope. Somebody will say, or some say, that blood is thicker than water. So there are instances where you wish you could do away with your sibling or your parents or something, but you just have to find a way of managing or living with them. And it takes a lot of resilience, and it takes a lot of intentional actions to keep the relationships going. We have friendships. We form all kinds of friendships. Some of them are very close. People talk about besties, best friends, you have friends that are, distant friends, online friends, and all kinds. And these kinds of relationships also have their own challenges. There are people that have had their trust broken by the person they thought was their best friend, and so even in our relationship with friends, there are issues that come up and we need to find a way of coping. Then we have professional relationships. So for those who are working in the work environment, you have people that you need to relate with, connect with, work with, agree with, assist to do things. And there are various levels of this relationship, even in the professional world. And if you understand what kind of relationship it is, then you will also know how to manage your expectations so that you don't expect somebody who is not your friendship in the workspace to relate with you as though it is the same with another person who is your friend. And so in the professional sense, there may be somebody that is even your partner, your love partner, or your best friend. But when it comes to work, when it comes to business, when it comes to your organization and the responsibilities you have to know how to separate the kind of relationship that is existing there from what you have outside the workspace. So we have professional relationships, and there are also issues that come with that particular space. Then we talk about romantic relationships or love relationships. Or love relationships. And in this, we can talk about the dating relationships, courtship, marriage, and all that. So once it comes to intimate partner relationships, or what we would say love relationships that are more centered on, marriage or dating or courtship, whichever way you want to look at it. There are issues, there are challenges. Just earlier today, one of my friends was talking about how there's been a serious relationship heartbreak, in their church, and it's not an easy one, So these were people that were in love. These were people that had plans, and then suddenly, they had to break up. So it comes with its own challenges. And if you are not someone who has developed that resilience, like the little plant we saw in our first image, you will struggle. You will crumble under the pressure. And for some people, they end up, not being themselves again. They may not go mad. They may not take their lives or commit suicide, but they just won't be the person that they once were. Some become very, very, withdrawn. For some people, they become a monster just out of nowhere, and it's because of the hurt that they've not been able to heal from. So there are romantic relationships, and then we also have the social relationships. So this is classifying all the other kinds of relationships we have um, beyond the ones we have mentioned. So whether it's in church, in the mosque, your religious setting, your school, old students union, or you belong to some association, some NGO, all the other kinds of relationships or associations we have with other people. And all these forms of relationships, as we have said, come with their own challenges. And understanding how resilience can play a role and how you need to be intentional with coping can really go a long way. So we'll take questions and contributions after the presentation. So we'll look at some key tips for building resilience in relationships. And for the ease of recall, I have 5 R's, 5 R's for building resilience. Resilience, as we have defined, is your ability to bounce back from setbacks, adjust or adapt yourself to manage, situations in a way that you don't crumble, but you become stronger due to the experiences or the challenges you've gone through. And for our relationships, connecting it to any of the relationships that we can think of, these five, keys can really be helpful. The first one is reflect. The first one is to reflect. Now, there is this old Greek saying that man know thyself, man know thyself. And one of the things that is very important in human relationships, relating with other people, is self-awareness. And self-awareness is a key aspect of what we call emotional intelligence. There are a lot of people that are not, able to read themselves and read other people, because you don't know yourself, you don't understand yourself, you don't understand your ideologies, your emotional, state, and how certain things affect you in whatever way. So reflection, self-reflection is a very important part of building, healthy relationships, and being somebody that will be able to withstand the shocks. There are some people that go into romantic relationships putting all their hopes and all their trust in the other person. And so it's like their whole world is now on the other person. And even when things begin to turn out into red flags, they are not able to identify them. And even when others identify those red flags and point it out to this person, because they lack this self-awareness, they are not able to see the danger coming until it hits them. And so self-reflection is a very important thing. As a person, you need to sit down and do some introspection. If it is in the workplace, the people that you are working with, your superior, for instance, how do you talk to your superior? Are there instances where you use certain words and it seems they were not happy with the words you used? Are there instances where you behaved in a certain way, passed a comment, and your colleague at the workplace, from their face, you could see that they were not comfortable with that comment? If you don't take time to introspect, look within, you may not be able to build good relationships. And you may get to a point where that colleague probably bursts out one day and you are wondering how, why. They have been building up a certain, pain out of things you have said, and probably they've even complained about that you have not paid attention to. In romantic relationships, whether in a marriage or in a courtship or dating relationship, that self-reflection, reflecting on self and the other person, is important. We hear of love languages. Yes, you may not be somebody that believes in all these love language. My love language is this and that. But if you are somebody who takes time to reflect, you may identify that there are certain things that make you feel loved, make you feel important. For one person, if you take time to call them every day, to say hello, when you take time to, probably something they shared with you as a struggle, you take time to get in touch, to check up, how is it going? That is something that makes them feel loved. And so if you want to keep the relationship going and you are not somebody who takes time to reflect, then there will be a lot of challenges. The person who does not introspect will have a lot of shocks to deal with. So reflection is important. Reflecting on yourself, who you are, your beliefs, your ways of managing conflict. There may be somebody who would always probably shrink. You just coil in when things are not going well right in your relationship. Uh, if it's a friendship, your best friend, there are things that probably they want you to do that you don't feel like you want to do, but just because of them, you will do it. If you are not able to take time to reflect on how these things are affecting you, you may get to a point where you begin to resent them all of a sudden because maybe you just finally woke up. So self-reflection and reflecting on your actions and that of others is very important. Number two is reframing. One thing about resilience, and if we go back to our initial image of this little plant, you see, for a certain seed, the picture that it is seeing is that I can't come out of this ground. It is solid, it is concrete. Yes, I can see there are some cracks here and there, but well, I don't want to travel all the way to find a space. But then for another person, seeing the cracks is an opportunity to show that, I can still do it. I can still manage myself out of it. So in challenges, in situations where you have problems, you have trouble with the one you are relating with, your parent, your colleague, your loved one, instead of always looking at where they are at fault, for instance, you want to look at where, for instance, you may have gone wrong. And so it's not always you are bad, you are always not checking out. So there shouldn't be that blame game always happening. As you reflect, you also begin to reframe. So, for instance, this person who couldn't check up on you for the past 3 days, instead of thinking, well, maybe they are seeing another person, they are cheating on me. Why not reframe that? Probably there's something happening to him or her for which reason they've not been able to reach out. When you begin to reframe that thought, then it helps you to reach out to that person who would have ordinarily been checking up on you, but hasn't done so for the past 3 days. So how we really look at things, and in therapeutic sense, we talk about cognitive reframing or restructuring. How you see things, how you interpret things are important. And if there are challenges that come up in relationships and you are thinking of it can't be resolved, chances are that you will not take the steps to resolve them. But for the one who looks at the other side of it, that there's always a way around issues, there's no problem that cannot be resolved. That person or those individuals in their relationship can mend their troubles and then move on. So reframing is very important. And one of the key things in reframing situations is also to look at the I statements instead of the you statements, which is something I've mentioned, but I would like to re-emphasize. I feel how you spoke to me the other time wasn't the best. This is a better way of communicating than you don't know how to talk. The last time you just spoke anyhow and you hurt me. That even if you add please, that way of communicating is like pushing fire towards somebody and then expecting that they will stand there and then receive it, But if I say that I think or I feel that how you spoke to me the other time was not the best, it's pointing the camera, so to speak, to myself and how I felt about the situation, so that it is not about you being a problem. It is about how I felt about that action. And that in itself can go a long way in helping us build very effective relationships. Then we talk about recharging. There are times where in science, if I remember my basic Greek in science, there was this thing they call fallow period, the fallow period. So in farming or in agriculture, There are times where the land has lost its, uh, essence. It's not really producing much. The nutrients have been depleted, and so there's a point where one of the ways of getting the land to get back to its best is to give it a period of not planting on that land. So it's a fallow period. It's a period where there's no planting happening on that ground. And that helps the land to recover itself. So all you do probably is to get some manure on the land, do all kinds of things that can energize the land without planting a crop on the land. So as individuals as well, there may be times where we need to take a step back and recharge. Sometimes in the heat of things, as we relate with people, all the problems coming up and all that, we are not making time for ourselves just to get better. Stress in itself can be one of the main problem causes in relationships. I'm sure some of us may relate with that experience. If you are stressed out, if you have a stressful day, your bestie or your romantic partner may even seem to be annoying you if they keep calling you at the time that you want to take a rest. And so it's important for us to make time to recharge. Recharging means that as a person, make time to have some fun, make time to rest, make time to go out, whether with yourself alone or with your partner, to engage in things that are not emotionally draining, but just help you to get back to yourself. And that is important. Recharging is important, and communicating that is very key. There are instances where I think there was a case where the couple, they've been working, doing a lot of things, up and down, it's like their work life is so demanding that it got to a point where it's like there's no connection again. Like you see the other person as just an everyday person. There's no, somebody will say the love tank, it seems like it has lost its capacity. There was no connection. The emotional feelings, the emotional intimacy was gone. And what they needed was some vacation together. That was a way to recharge so that all the busyness of the world is taken off, and you are able to get back. It's just like how there's a famine or there's a dry season, and then I don't know whether it's the Bible or it's just a quote that talks about how happy, just to paraphrase, the leaves will be or are when there's the sight of rain. So if you are a leaf, you are a plant, you are a tree that has been in a period of dryness, if you sense the coming of water, of rain, that is something refreshing. And so let's make time to refresh. Let's make time to recharge. Let's make time to rest ourselves. If you feel stressed out, communicate that to your partner, communicate that to your colleague. If you feel there are a lot of things bothering you, instead of keeping it without communicating, communicate it so that they know that you need some time to get back to yourself. Very important. If not, the person thinks you are avoiding them. The person thinks that you are probably having something ulterior in mind. Communicate it so that you can have time to recharge when necessary. Reconnect. That's the fourth R. Reconnect. That's basically about building a certain social system for yourself. One of the keys for a sound well-being, according to a man called Martin Seligman, a psychologist, he talks about how our social relationships, or how our networks, the people we live with, whether it's your child, your parent, your friends and all that, how they play a key role in us being happy. So if you are surrounded by happy people, chances are that you'll be a happy person. You see, those that probably have friends, and in the friendship group, there's somebody that is the jovial person, or the one that um is the fun of the party. You'd realize that even when you feel down and you are in their company, chances are that you will put up a smile. Chances are that you would be able to talk about the things that are heavy on your heart. So if there are things that are going wrong in your romantic relationship, you want to connect with a counselor, you want to connect with your pastor, you want to connect with your best friend, you want to connect with, the Bible, you want to connect with a book, you want to connect. So building that connection, sometimes it may feel like a broken relationship if it's romantic. Some people end a relationship and they don't want to enter any new relationship at all. And even with friendships, they become cautious. What will happen is that very soon you'll begin to feel isolated. And isolation in itself can be a very problematic situation to be in. Okay. Now, the last R is resolve. And resolve is saying that when it comes to resilience in relationships, whether romantic, familial, friendship, professional, social, it takes the individual to make up his or her mind that this thing is going to work. So there are marriages that were on the brink of collapsing, but then the individuals in the marriage, made a decision. They resolved that no matter what happens, we are going to work around this. We are going to make this work. And for the most part, it works because the individual, the two people have resolved, they have determined, they have made a decision that this thing, we will not let it die. And it takes your personal conviction and determination to build solid relationships. There are people in the workplace, there's a colleague that probably they don't like for whatever reason. There are problems, there are things that have happened, conflicts that are unresolved and all. But then they make up their mind that so long as it concerns work, I'm going to work with this individual, to make progress. So it's not like I'm going to look for their downfall just to prove a point. If I'm paired with them, I'll give up of my best and we'll work together to ensure that we achieve the goal. It takes a personal resolve, a personal decision to do that. And if we go back to that image of our little plant, if you are that little plant as a seed and you decide that I'm going to look for where the sunlight seems to be coming from, where there seems to be some air coming from, you will make your way there. You will make your way there. So your personal resolve is very important when it comes to being resilient in relationships. When you have a broken heart, you have a relationship of many years and probably you thought you were about getting married and then it ends. No matter how many people try to console you, if you don't get to the point where you personally decide that I'm going to get over this and I'm going to let go of the hurt and move on, you may stay there forever and you will continue to hurt. So the personal resolve is very important. And you build that resolve by reflecting on yourself, reflecting on the situations, taking time to do the introspection to see where probably you went wrong and the things that you did right and where you could do better, and reframing the things that have happened, looking at the positive side of things, looking at the side of things where we can make some progress around. There's somebody that probably you've not spoken to for a long time because there's some challenge that came up. There was a conflict, you know, and you meet this person and the hurt is still there. But you see, sometimes just letting go of the pride and saying hello, greeting the person, asking how are you, can be the beginning of your healing. Because the more you attempt to see the person as an enemy, the more you keep hurting until the point where in reframing, you know, re-looking at how, after all, you know, somebody will say, after all, 6 feet. It doesn't hurt saying hello to this person. If they don't respond to my greeting, that is fine. But it's so long as it depends on me, as the Apostle Paul would say, you know, so long as it depends on you, live at peace with all people. So I look at, you know, myself, I look at the other person and begin to see how I can make some needed changes. So these are 5 key basic tips that can help us to become more resilient, so that when there are challenges in our relationship, romantic relationship, marital relationship, we'll be able to take time to reflect. And once we build our self-awareness, knowing where our weaknesses are, where our weak points are, belief systems, contrasting belief systems. And if you are not able to do that reflection and understand that the person's background and upbringing has a certain impact on them and what they believe, you may struggle with the relationship and you will not be able. Recently, I was at a program and it was a relationship session, and the speaker, Reverend Dr. Avotri, was sharing with us some experience in the initial stages of his marriage, and what was the problem or the point of difference between him and the wife was how to do quiet time. Quiet time. So for those who know quiet time, early in the morning, you spend some time alone in the scriptures and in praying to God. You have your silent moment with God. How he believed quiet time should be done was different from how the wife believed quiet time should be done. And that was a major, you know, source of, you know, disagreement in the early stages of their marriage, until one time. So this is where the reconnect, you know, comes in. Until one time, long story short, they went to a particular church, one of the churches they know, and on that day, the preacher man taught on quiet time, and it is from that particular teaching that they came to agree on one way of doing it, despite their differences. So there may be basic things or things that are even, you know, more significant that can cause all kinds of disagreements in our relationships. But then if we are able to reflect, reframe, recharge, reconnect, and resolve, I believe that we'll be more resilient, we'll bounce back from the difficulties that come, and we'll be able to adapt or adjust to the changing situations that we find ourselves in. The final thing we'll talk about before we take questions and contributions are 4 C's. Now, all these things we have spoken about, the R's, reflect, reframe, recharge, reconnect, and resolve, are in themselves coping strategies. They help you specifically to become more resilient, particularly with reference to relationships. But then we want to talk about 4 additional things that are able to help us build effective relationships. And as I have mentioned from the beginning, this webinar is not focused solely on romantic relationships, because as human beings, we relate in all kinds of spaces. So the things we are speaking about, you can apply them in all specific cases in different ways, and it will help. The first C, the first coping strategy we'll talk about, and just for emphasis, I mentioned this is to ensure that it's easier to recall. So resilience is an R. So the 5 key things are R's. Coping strategy C. So we are talking about 4 C's for effective relationships. Number 1 is communication. And I've mentioned it, I think, a lot of times in the previous section. Communication is important. And when we talk about communication, we say that communication has not ended or is not effective until the person who is being communicated to has understood what is being communicated and has given feedback to you, the person who communicated to them. So once there's the input and there's the processing, there needs to be a certain common understanding so that when feedback is given, it meets the expectation of the one who communicated. So if I communicate to you and you don't understand, it is important for you to let me know you don't understand. There are some people, some of us, we like assuming. And there's this quote I love so much. It says that assumptions are the termites of relationships. Assumptions. So when you assume, you keep assuming, what you are doing is that you are creating termites. Termites are those small insects that eat wood, and they will eat it to the point where it begins to, become weak. So assumptions are the termites of relationships. When I tell you that I am busy, I can't talk now, if you assume wrongly, going back to how you are framing the situation, it will mean that you will be hurt at the other side. Probably you felt that you are in an emergency or you need to talk to your partner right now, but your partner is in a certain meeting that they can't pick a call. And so if they don't communicate, there's a problem. If they don't send a text that I'm busy, I can't talk now, that is a problem in itself. It can't help the relationship to be effective and strong. And so if the person is able to communicate that I'm busy, I can't talk now, then you at the other end, if you don't appreciate the fact that this person can actually be in a situation that they can't talk, the same way you can also be in a situation where you may not be able to talk in a certain meeting, but text. If you get it that way, then you can give feedback that, okay, it's an emergency. Now, the person who is at the other end, who is busy, seeing a message that it's an emergency, can then find a way around if they need to seek permission and leave that meeting, even if they are the ones presenting, because you have sent feedback that it is an emergency. The person can excuse the audience, excuse the people they are meeting, or probably whatever is happening, just to be sure that they get back. So communication is very important. We sometimes, ignore this particular bit. And, despite the fact that communication, effective communication, is a topic that is broadly discussed, it keeps becoming a challenge. And how we are also communicating is important. The fact is that when somebody is used to, for instance, I don't know which example to use. If I am okay, so there was this particular case. I think it was a traffic light incident. So I think the yellow light was not working, and so this driver doesn't know that it's not working, and so that means that once the thing is on green, it just goes straight to red. And for some weird reason, once the thing was still on green, he just crossed the line. And when he was stopped or caught, his argument is that He didn't know that the yellow was not working, you know. And there are situations like that. Sometimes we feel that the person does not understand us, but to them, you should know better. And that can be problematic. And so the point we are making here is that make sure that whatever you are communicating to the other person, they understand. And if you are someone who does not understand what your partner is telling you, let them know. Your boss said you should work on a particular proposal. You didn't get the whole idea well. Don't assume that, you know, when you go and find out, you will be able to come up with something. You will come up with something and it will be rubbish. And they will ask you to go back and do it all over again. So it is better to tell your boss, your superior, whoever you are supposed to do the work for, just to be clear, this and this and this, how do you want it to be done? So that you are clear on what should be done and you will do a good job. That helps to avoid all kinds of unnecessary drama. And if you are also a superior or you are somebody who is working with another person, if they need clarity, provide a clarity. Don't assume that they should know. No, it doesn't work well that way. The second C is control. And in here, we are talking about emotional control, you know, physical control, and all kinds of control you can think about. Controlling your tongue, controlling your feelings or your emotions. And that is very important. Self-regulation, which is also another key component of what we call emotional intelligence. Sometimes we are not able to regulate our emotions. For some people, they say, this is how I am. Media, when if you tell me, I'll tell you tell you my mind. You can't sustain any meaningful relationship. It won't be surprising you will be employed in a particular organization and you go and talk anyhow to your superior or your colleagues and they will sack you just because you've not been able to manage and control yourself. You feel that that is how I am, so that's how I talk. But there's a problem with how you talk. So you need to work on self-control. Self-control. The Bible says that the one who is not able to control himself is like a city without walls. So if you can't control your tongue, you end up always in trouble because of the things you say. You know, I'm sure some of us know there are some specific politicians that, you know, I will not mention names, but it become like public knowledge that the person will talk and probably they didn't mean harm, but they will end up speaking and they will say something that will make everybody angry. And if you are such a person, you need to learn how to manage or control yourself. And you do this going back to the 5 hours, taking the point of the reframing and the reflecting. This thing I want to say, if I tell my partner, how would they feel? That reflection is important. You know, this action I want to take. And there's this thing we were taught growing up in Sunday school, a particular song that what asembi ara meka se adibi ara meye anka se mi bisa se be ye yesu fe. That is something that helps in building a solid relationship with your Lord, and it also applies with your relationships with all others. So this thing I want to do, if I put myself in the other person's shoe, will I feel okay? You know, this thing I am about to say, if someone had said it to me in this moment, how would I feel? And that is where empathy comes in. We'll talk about compassion, but that reflection and then changing how you say things, how you do things, just so that you don't end up causing harm, is part of control. Controlling your tongue, controlling your emotions, controlling your actions is important. Then we have what we call compromise. The third C is compromise. If you want to have a solid, healthy relationship with people, with others, and be able to live at peace in your workplace, despite the fact that you even have differences with your boss, with your colleagues. You have to learn how to make a compromise. Compromise is this, in this case, is not saying that you do away with your values and your beliefs and all, but it is for you to understand that you can't always have your way. There are some relationships where it's like it doesn't last. Some people get married within a week, they want to end it because it's like they came into the relationship with a certain idea of how the marriage should look like. And within 1 week, it's not looking like that. They want out. So if you don't learn that, I can't always get it the way I want. And so I need to come to a point where we more or less like 50-50, or I let go of certain things so that I can meet the other person halfway. If you don't learn how to do that, you'll always be in trouble. Compromise is very important. You are very tired. You are feeling like you want to rest, but your partner wants to talk to you. So as an individual who wants the relationship to thrive, then I need to make a compromise. I'm exhausted, but you know what? I'll make some 10 minutes for the conversation. And then we go back to communication. I let my partner know that I am very tired. In fact, I'm just coming from a trip. And so we may not be able to talk for long today. And the partner, you, the person on the other side, you should also, if we are both people that have learned how to compromise, you realize that it will be easier. You also will understand that this human being is, even if it's a machine, can break down. And so if this human being I'm relating with is saying that today I can't do 1 hour of talking on the phone because of this particular thing, then we meet each other halfway. We do 30 minutes. Compromise is important. In working with somebody, you know, sometimes you may need to step in for the person. Yes, they probably should have communicated earlier that they will not come to the office, but they couldn't come. They have called you that they need to do something at the office, but because they couldn't come, you know, they are not able to do it from where they are. Can you do it for them? You compromise, you just, you know, yes, I wish I wouldn't do it, but I just do it for the sake of helping the other person. You realize that it becomes easier when you also need help. The other person will step in for you, and compromise is very important. There are some people, our religious orientation so rigid and strict, you know, and we just can't hear the other person out, whether it's your denominational beliefs or something. And so you come into a relationship, a romantic relationship, and these two people can't stay together because of a trivial thing. Imagine the example I gave that Reverend Dr. Abatri shared with us. Imagine the two of them hadn't compromised for how to do quiet time. It would have continued to be a major issue because both of them, husband and wife, are high in terms of their spiritual standing, and they are served in leadership positions. So these are people that spiritually they are grounded. So if they don't decide that let's meet each other halfway, that little thing can be a very dangerous, you know, termite in the relationship. So you need to come to a point where you learn how to compromise. It helps in making relationships thrive, whether romantic, friendship, or any other. Then the last C we'll talk about is compassion. And because we are talking to particularly participants of Compassion International, one thing that will take you far is when you are a compassionate person. When you are somebody that will look at others and have this sense of empathy. Empathy, in basic terms, says that putting yourself in the other person's shoe, living in the other person's world to see how they are struggling, to understand why you have not spoken to them for 1 week. That in itself will let you go back to the first C, communicate. But if you don't care, and like the people we call narcissists, they don't really care about your emotions. They don't care whether you are hurting, you are sad, and all that. It becomes difficult. But if you learn to have fellow feeling, whether the person is your boss and they are maybe a professor, just because they know you are a thoughtful person, you care, you are compassionate. In fact, they will go all out for you. Your colleague, your friend in school, you know, yes, they couldn't come for the lecture. They were not feeling well. Just the fact that when you close from the lecture, you called them that I didn't see you in class and that this is what we learned, and you share with them what you went to learn in the class. That tells them that you are thinking of them. And you know, it may be a little action, but it can go a long way. When we learn to be compassionate, when we learn to be empathetic, when we learn to have fellow feeling and look out for the good of others, it really helps them. One of the love languages they talk about is the language of service. For some people, just little acts of service is something that, you know, it catches them. It's like you have killed them. Just the fact that, you know, you decided to do something for them before they came. You know, they were supposed to sweep the plot, but by the time they came, when you realized they're going to be late, you swept the plot for them before they got to school. And so because of that, they were not punished. That communicates a lot more than your words will tell them. You know, there's always a place in people's hearts that if you show them compassion, if you show them that you care, you have actually, like, literally bought their heart. And when we learn to do that, communicate, control, compromise, and be compassionate, that can help you to cope with all the challenges that may come in relationships, and it will help you to build effective relationships. This is where we'll end it with a statement from Dr. Martin Seligman, a key pioneer in positive psychology. And he says that on the relationship side, if you teach people to respond actively and constructively when someone they care about has a victory, it increases love and friendship and decreases the probability of depression. If all of us will make the attempt to be active in responding to each other, whether it's your love partner, your spouse, your colleague, your boss, with your subordinate, if we can be very active in responding to the needs and the victories of our directors, you know, our health worker, all kinds of things, we are able to show them that indeed we can see what they are doing for us and we appreciate it. It increases the love they have for us, and it also creates a more conducive environment for people not to be depressed. People will not be sad for long. Once they are sad, there's somebody who can come in to help them. People will not lose hope, because even when they lose hope, there's somebody who will come in and then help them out. Thank you very much. This is where we'll end. We'll take questions and contributions. Thank you.